If you've got tight upper traps, I am going to really help you out, because if you're like some of the members here at State of Fitness, you've seen a physio, an osteo, or a myo, and you've just had constant work done on the upper traps and then nothing's really worked. You sit down at your desk all day with work, really tight, you go and do all the work possible that you need to do to try and release them, and then if you feel good for a couple of days, and then a few days later you're back in agony in terms of tightness or even referral headaches and things like that. Because releasing the upper traps, just like any muscle, because it feels tight, isn't, in my books, it's not really a good enough reason, because we can't let our actions really be dictated by our feelings and how things feel. There needs to be a little more rationale and intelligence behind it. So our process is, if you look in the mirror and your collarbones or like your clavicles, if they're relatively horizontal, so you can just look, I won't show my collarbone off, it's going to be a little bit tricky, especially with a mic, but if you look in the mirror and your collarbones are quite horizontal, so just like down like that, then that's a bit of an indicator that we shouldn't release upper traps, and I'll take you through that in a second. But if there's a little bit of an upslope, anywhere from 15 to 20 degrees, and then they're feeling quite tight and stiff, then go for it. The reason for, if your collarbones are depressed, you've got a lot of muscles that are pulling the shoulder down into depression, and one of those devils is your lats, and I've got a heap of other videos going through releasing the lats. So the lats comes from the inserts in through the front of the shoulder, essentially comes all the way down into the lower back and onto the pelvis, and in some cadaver studies it actually has attachments onto the shoulder blade as well. The anatomy of the lat is really interesting, but that's another conversation for another topic. I won't divulge too much. Anyway, so the lat's main function is to help internally rotate and depress the shoulder and pull it down. So lat pull down, we're pulling the shoulders down. But what happens when this guy and your pecs and a few other muscles that comes really overactive, it pulls the shoulder down into depression, and then the upper traps are the main muscle that stop your shoulder going down any further. So this really needs to switch on to stop it going down any further. So that's why if you present with relatively horizontal collarbones, we want to avoid getting into the trap itself, because it can just be feeding into the issue and making things worse in the long run. And we got to look at how your lats, what's going on with your lats, your breathing, your pecs, and the shoulder blades and everything. But if your collarbones have a little bit of an upslope, 15 to 20 degrees, thereabouts, this is what we're going to do. So standing upper trap release, I'm just going to use a standard trigger ball for this one. And we're just going to set it up at about chest height, leaning forward, and we're directly working into the upper trap. So we're just pushing down until you find a tender spot, and then we're going to move your head to the side and then tuck the chin and move it around. It's a little bit tricky to kind of roll around and get into it, and we want to be a little bit more precise with getting in through the upper traps. So if you just push into it, find a tender spot, and we're going to move it around. Just be a little bit cautious. If you get any nerve referrals, please move on. Anything, when you're doing any work above the collarbone, we just need to be a little bit careful. We've got a lot of nerve and vascular structures that come out of the back of the neck, and then down through the back of the head, and then down through the neck, that we've got to be a bit careful of. So any nerve referrals, move on. And in terms of pain and pressure, just like a 4 out of 10 is normally pretty good, versus trying to get into your pec, you can be a little bit more aggressive. So I really hope this helps. If you've got any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.